Are you struggling getting your songs to sound the way they're supposed to sound? Are your mixes flat sounding, muddy, harsh, or just feeling like off, unbalanced? Then you're probably making at least one of the 3 mistakes that I'm going to go through in this video. And if you apply at least one of the principles that I'm about to show you in this video, assume that you're not already doing it, your mixes will sound better. Let's go! The first mistake is to start a mixing session from a blank slate. So starting with a blank template, it's like no tracks are there at all. Everything is routed out to a specific bus, for example, aux1 right there. So this is the mix bus sort of. Every time you want some processing for something, you have to pull up the processing one by one, and it takes a lot of time. And remember that mixing a song is a race against the clock. It's a race against your ears becoming too tired to hear the difference between the frequencies, and everything just mashes together, and the result is a poor, weak mix. Setting up sends is a mess, so you have to route them to buses and then route the buses to another bus, or you can have everything go out to stereo out, making it almost impossible to make instrumental and a cappella versions of everything. And yeah, it's just a mess. I've been a sinner of this a long time, until I did something about it, and I'm sharing it with you as well. I have made a mixing template that is exclusively made for mixing in Logic Pro. You can get it in the description down below. And I also have some videos about how to make your own mixing templates no matter what DAW you use. So I strongly recommend you checking that out. I have a card up here or something. And what this basically does is that you have all the tracks, all the routings, all the effect sends, all processing, all plugins that you need in a typical mixing session are ready to go. They're already loaded, so all you need to do is to drag in audio files from your mixing session. For example, if you use a lot of synths and you have audio tracks with a lot of effects going on, you can export all of that into a fresh mixing session like that, and it's really recommended. Which leads us into the second mistake, and that is overloading your tracks with plugins. So when you have a mixing session going, it's often tempting to use and apply all the plugins that are in your folder, especially if you carved out some money for it. So for example, I have the Sooth 2. It costed me around, I think it set me back about 200 bucks. So there was a period in time where I felt the need of using that on all tracks, and it was a mess. My mindset about this is when I start a mixing session, I start without plugins. I have my plugins in my template, but they're bypassed by default because I want to make the mix as good as it can be without any processing, only using the faders and the pan pots. The third mixing mistake is to ignore reference tracks. And that's like painting the picture without seeing the colors. So basically, you listen to a couple of tracks that are in the same ballpark as your music, and then you seek to adjust the levels of your tracks according to the reference. So you can focus on different parts of the track. For example, the snare. How loud should the snare be in relation to the bass? How loud should the vocals be in relation to the instrumental? And so on and so forth. This is perfect for finding the levels of the bass, how powerful the kick should be, the hi-hats, how shimmering they can be, or how to reduce harshness up in the upper frequencies, and so on and so forth. And a couple of tips is to not overcomplicate it. You will hear people talk about you need the WAV file and it needs to be the best quality file for references. But if you don't have access to that, just use anything that you have on Apple Music, for example. Just drag in the MP3 into your mixing session and have it muted back and forth. Just make sure that your reference tracks go to the stereo output and not through the master or mix bus. And another trick you can do when using a reference track is to have an EQ set up on the stereo out, and then you can solo certain frequencies so that you can hear how is the 200 to 500 hertz range in the reference tracks, and then you can compare it to your mix and go back and forth like that with different parts of the frequency spectrum. That's a neat little tip right there. Mastering the Mix has a reference plugin that is really awesome for this type of use, and it makes it a lot easier to do what I just said. And a final little bonus mistake is to mix at loud levels because you really like your song, so you want to hear it out loud. And when you turn something up, You also hear the bass and the treble a lot better, and the mid-range is more like smoothed out. When you do that, you also tend to exaggerate how you mix the lows and the highs. So keep it low. And another thing that happens when you do this, typically in home studios, you don't have the best acoustic treatments on your wall. Even if you have some, it's not professional. It might be DIY or acoustic panels and bass traps that you've bought online maybe, but it's not the same as a professional mixing environment. And you will have standing waves, you will have frequency buildups, and all of this gets amplified the louder you turn up your speakers. If you mix on a low volume, you get less room, sort of. To summarize, use a mixing template, make your own, or download my free mixing template for Logic Pro. The link is in the description below. And don't overload your tracks with plugins. Mix only using faders and pan in the beginning. And finally, use reference tracks. Just go on your favorite streaming platform, download as a file, drag into your DAW, and you're set up. And if you like videos about mixing mistakes and tips and tricks and hacks, check out one of these videos. I think you'll love them. Hope I see you there. Thanks so much for watching. Peace out.